My dearest brothers and sisters, Salamu Alaikum. You keep trying, you keep pushing, you keep making effort after effort, yet somehow the door refuses to open. It doesn't matter how badly you want it, how much you plan for it, or how much you pray for it, something keeps stopping it from happening. And deep inside, a quiet frustration begins to grow. You start questioning yourself, questioning your efforts, even questioning why things feel so difficult when you're trying so hard. But what if the resistance you're feeling is not rejection? What if the closed doors are not punishment? What if, in ways you cannot yet see, Allah is protecting you from something your heart is too attached to understand clearly? Because sometimes the thing you are forcing is the very thing Allah is saving you from. When something in your life keeps resisting you, no matter how much effort you put into it, it can feel confusing and even discouraging, because from your side, you are doing everything you can. You are planning carefully, making sincere dua, taking steps forward and trying again, even after facing setbacks, yet the outcome does not change. The door stays closed, or it opens just enough to give hope and then shuts again, and this repeated pattern makes it feel like something is wrong with you or your efforts, but the reality is much deeper than that. Not every resistance in your life is a result of failure, and not every closed door is a sign that you are not capable. Sometimes the resistance itself is a form of guidance, quietly redirecting you away from something that is not written for you. Allah does not operate randomly. Every delay, every pause, every barrier has meaning behind it, even if that meaning is hidden from you in the moment. You may only see the surface of what you want, the part that looks good, feels right, and fits into your hopes, but Allah sees the full picture, including what lies ahead, what could harm you, what could drain your peace, or what could pull you away from something better that is meant for you. And because of that complete knowledge, He sometimes places resistance in your path, not to frustrate you, but to protect you from stepping into something that would not bring the goodness you expect. Think about how many times you have wanted something so badly that you were willing to overlook its flaws, to ignore the signs that something was not right, simply because your heart had already become attached to it. In those moments, your desire becomes stronger than your clarity, and you begin to push harder, believing that persistence alone will make it work. But Allah, in His mercy, does not always allow you to succeed in what you insist on, especially when that success could lead to consequences you are not prepared to carry. So the door resists not because you are being pushed away without reason, but because you are being held back with wisdom. This kind of resistance can feel heavy because it challenges your expectations. You expect that effort should lead to results, that sincerity should open doors, and that wanting something deeply should bring it closer to you. But sometimes the true test is not in how hard you can push, but in whether you can recognize when to step back. Because forcing what continues to resist you can slowly take away your peace, your clarity, and even your trust. While accepting that a door is closed can return you to a place of calm where you begin to see things differently. It is also important to understand that not all closed doors are permanent, but the ones that keep resisting you in the same way again and again are often telling you something. They are not random obstacles placed in your path without purpose. They are signals that what you are trying to enter may not be aligned with what is truly meant for you. And instead of seeing that resistance as something negative, you can begin to see it as a form of care, a quiet way in which Allah protects you from walking into something that could cost you more than you realize. So when you face a door that refuses to open despite your continuous effort, do not rush to blame yourself or assume that you are not good enough. Pause and reflect. Ask yourself whether this resistance is guiding you rather than stopping you. Because sometimes the door that does not open is not a missed opportunity, but a hidden protection placed there with wisdom, waiting for you to trust that what is meant for you will not require you to force your way into it. Many times you begin to believe that if you just try harder, push more, or stay consistent long enough, everything will finally fall into place. You tell yourself that success comes to those who do not give up. So you keep going, even when the situation starts draining your energy and disturbing your peace. From the outside, it looks like strength and determination, but inside there is a quiet tension building because despite all your effort, things are not moving the way you expected. And this is where a deeper reality begins to unfold. Not every situation in your life is meant to be solved through effort alone. Some situations are not asking you to push harder. They are asking you to pause and surrender. Surrender is often misunderstood. It does not mean giving up in a negative way, and it does not mean becoming lazy or careless. It means recognizing that you have reached the limit of what your effort can control, and beyond that point, there is a wisdom that is not in your hands. You are still responsible for trying, for making sincere effort, for doing what is within your ability. But once you have done that, there comes a moment where continuing to push begins to harm you more than it helps you. That moment is not a sign of weakness, it is an invitation to trust. Allah does not always test you by asking how much you can do. Sometimes the real test is whether you can let go of what you cannot control. Because holding on too tightly to something that is not unfolding for you can slowly take away your peace, your focus, and even your connection with Allah. You begin to measure your worth by outcomes, and you start to feel restless when things do not go your way. But surrender brings you back to balance. It reminds you that your role is to act sincerely, and Allah's role is to decide the outcome with perfect knowledge. There is a certain calm that comes with surrender, a quiet acceptance that allows your heart to rest even when things are uncertain. Instead of constantly trying to force an answer, you begin to trust that what is meant for you will not pass you by, and what is not meant for you will not stay, no matter how hard you try to hold on to it. This shift does not happen instantly, and it is not always easy, especially when your heart is deeply attached to what you want. But the more you learn to release that tight grip, the more clarity begins to replace confusion. Sometimes what you call persistence is actually fear of letting go. Fear that if you stop trying, you will lose your chance, or that things will never work out. But what is truly written for you does not depend on you forcing it into existence. It comes to you in ways that do not break you, in ways that align with your peace, not against it. And when something requires you to constantly struggle just to keep it alive, it may be a sign that you are trying to hold on to something that was never meant to stay. So instead of asking yourself how much more you can do, begin to ask whether it is time to trust more, whether it is time to step back and allow Allah's plan to unfold without resistance from your side. Because you are not always being tested in how hard you can push, but in how sincerely you can surrender. And in that surrender, you do not lose anything that was truly meant for you. Instead, you gain something far more valuable, a sense of peace that no forced outcome could ever give you. Sometimes the reason you keep forcing something is not because it is truly right for you, but because of how it appears in your mind. You build a picture of what that opportunity, that relationship, or that goal will give you, and that picture becomes so convincing that it feels real. You begin to believe that once you achieve it, everything will finally settle, your worries will fade, and your heart will feel at peace. But what you are holding on to is not always the reality of the thing itself. It is often the idea you have created around it, and that idea can be very different from what it actually is. Your heart can become attached to a version of something that only exists in your expectations. You imagine how people will treat you, how your life will improve, how your struggles will disappear, and slowly this imagined outcome becomes the reason you keep pushing forward. Even when you start noticing signs that things are not as perfect as you thought, you overlook them, because letting go of the idea feels harder than facing the truth. So you continue, not because the path is clear, but because the image in your mind is too strong to walk away from. This is where the illusion begins to take control. It convinces you that what you are chasing is necessary for your happiness, when in reality it may not bring what you expect at all. Allah in His wisdom sees beyond the surface that you are drawn to. He knows what is hidden behind that opportunity, what it could lead to, and how it might affect your peace, your faith, and your future. And because of that, He may block it even while your heart is still attached to the image you created. It is not easy to accept that something you want so badly may not be as good as it seems. Your mind keeps reminding you of the benefits, the possibilities, and the hope you placed in it. But rarely does it show you the full picture. It does not show you the stress it might bring, the disappointment you might face, or the ways it could pull you away from something better that is meant for you. So you continue to chase, thinking you are moving towards something valuable, while in reality you may be moving towards something that would not fulfill you in the way you expect. When Allah places resistance in your path, it can sometimes be a way of breaking that illusion gently. It creates space for you to pause and look again, to question whether what you are holding on to is truly right, or if it only feels right because of how you imagined it. This pause is not meant to take something away from you without reason. It is meant to protect you from attaching your heart to something that cannot give you what you think it will. There comes a point where you have to be honest with yourself. Are you chasing the reality of something, or are you chasing the feeling you believe it will give you? Because those are not always the same. The feeling of being valued, secure, or successful does not always come from the thing you are trying to force. Sometimes it comes from something entirely different that you have not yet considered. Letting go of an illusion is not easy, especially when you have invested time, effort, and emotion into it. But holding on to it can keep you stuck, repeating the same cycle of effort and disappointment. When you begin to release that attachment even slightly, you create space for clarity to enter your heart. You start to see things as they are, not just as you hoped they would be. And in that clarity, you may realize that what you were chasing was never meant to complete you. And that Allah, in His mercy, was not denying you something good, but saving you from something that only looked good from a distance. When you begin to force something in your life, it does not only affect the situation you are trying to control, it slowly begins to affect your inner state as well. What may start as simple effort can gradually turn into pressure, and that pressure begins to settle in your thoughts, your emotions, and even your body. You start thinking about it constantly, replaying different outcomes in your mind, wondering what more you can do, what you might be doing wrong, and why things are not moving despite everything you are putting in. Without realizing it, your peace becomes tied to whether that one thing works out or not. This is where the distance begins. Not a physical distance, but a quiet separation between you and the calmness your heart was once capable of feeling. Because peace cannot live comfortably in a place where everything feels forced. When you are constantly trying to control an outcome, your mind stays alert, your heart stays tense, and your emotions become dependent on something that is uncertain. You begin to feel restless, even in moments that should feel calm, because your attention is always pulled back toward what you are trying to fix or achieve. Forcing also creates a kind of attachment that is difficult to notice at first. You start believing that you need this specific outcome in order to feel okay, as if your sense of stability depends on it. And the more you push, the more that attachment grows stronger. It becomes harder to step back, harder to accept alternatives, and harder to imagine a different path. You may even begin to ignore signs that something is not right, simply because you have already invested so much of yourself into it. In trying to hold on to one possibility, you unintentionally close yourself off from others that may be better for you. There is also a subtle shift that happens in your relationship with trust. When you force, you begin to rely more on your own control and less on the wisdom of what is unfolding. It feels like everything depends on how much you can manage, how much you can influence, and how much you can hold together. But this constant need to control creates a heavy burden, because deep down you know that not everything is within your power. And carrying that weight for too long can leave you feeling exhausted even when nothing has physically changed. Peace, on the other hand, comes from a different place. It comes from knowing that you have done what you can and allowing the rest to unfold without resistance. It comes from accepting that not every path is meant to be forced open, and that some things are better left to unfold in their own time or not at all. But when you are caught in the cycle of forcing, this kind of peace feels distant, almost unreachable, because your focus is always on making something happen rather than allowing things to be as they are. It is important to understand that forcing does not bring clarity. It often clouds it. The more you push, the harder it becomes to see the situation honestly. Your emotions become louder than your understanding, and your desire becomes stronger than your awareness. This makes it difficult to recognize whether what you are holding on to is truly good for you or simply something you have become used to chasing. And in that state, even small setbacks can feel overwhelming because they threaten the outcome you are trying so hard to secure. Stepping away from forcing does not mean you stop caring, and it does not mean you become passive. It means you allow your heart to return to a place where it is not constantly strained by expectation. It means you loosen your grip just enough to breathe again, to think clearly, and to reconnect with a sense of calm that is not dependent on a specific result. When you do this, something shifts within you. The tension begins to ease, your thoughts become quieter, and your heart starts to feel lighter. And in that lighter state, you begin to understand something important. What is truly meant for you will not require you to lose your peace in order to hold on to it. It will not demand constant pressure, endless overthinking, or emotional exhaustion just to keep it alive. It will come with a sense of ease, not because it is effortless, but because it aligns with what is right for you. So if you find yourself feeling drained, restless, and disconnected from your peace, it may not be because you are not trying hard enough. It may be because you are trying to force something that was never meant to be held that tightly. And sometimes the most powerful step you can take is not to push harder, but to gently let go and allow your heart to return to a place where peace is no longer out of reach. There are moments in life when something does not disappear all at once, but instead begins to fade slowly, almost in a way that is difficult to notice at first. What once felt strong starts to weaken. What once felt close begins to feel distant. And what once moved easily now feels heavy and uncertain. You may find that conversations change, opportunities lose their momentum, or the connection you once relied on no longer carries the same feeling. This gradual shift can be confusing because nothing seems completely gone, yet nothing feels the same either. And in that space, your heart often tries to hold on tighter, hoping to bring things back to how they used to be. But sometimes, this slow change is not a coincidence. It is a form of gentle removal. Allah, in His mercy, does not always take something away from you suddenly, especially when your heart is deeply attached to it. Instead, He allows distance to grow little by little, giving you time to adjust, to reflect, and to begin loosening your attachment without being overwhelmed all at once. This is a quiet kind of care, because a sudden loss can be too heavy for the heart to carry, while a gradual shift gives you space to process what is happening. During this phase, you may feel a sense of discomfort, as if something is slipping away but not fully gone. You might question what changed, wonder if you did something wrong, or try to fix what no longer feels natural. It becomes tempting to chase what is fading, to restore what is weakening, and to force things back into place. But this is where awareness becomes important. Not every distance is meant to be closed, and not every change is meant to be reversed. Some things are being gently removed because they are no longer meant to remain in your life. This kind of removal often comes with subtle signs. The ease you once felt begins to disappear, replaced by effort that feels heavier than before. The clarity you once had becomes replaced with confusion, and the sense of peace that once accompanied it begins to fade. These are not random shifts. They are signals that something is changing in a way that you may not fully understand yet. And instead of forcing things back to their previous state, it may be a moment to pause and recognize that you are being guided through a transition. It is natural to resist this process, especially when the thing being removed once meant so much to you. Your heart remembers how it felt at the beginning, and it holds on to that memory, hoping it can return. But sometimes what you are trying to bring back is not the reality of what it has become, but the version of it that no longer exists. And holding on to that past version can keep you stuck in a cycle of effort that no longer leads anywhere. Allah's wisdom is not limited to what you can currently see. He knows what lies ahead, what could harm you, and what could prevent you from reaching something better. So when something begins to fade from your life, it is not always a sign that you are losing something valuable. It may be a sign that you are being prepared to let go of something that no longer serves your growth, your peace, or your future. And this preparation happens gently, so your heart can slowly come to terms with what is changing. There is also a hidden kindness in this gradual removal. It allows you to learn detachment without shock, to reflect without panic, and to rebuild your focus without feeling completely lost. You begin to notice that your dependence on that thing is not as strong as it once was, and that your ability to stand without it is slowly growing. This does not mean the process is easy, but it does mean that you are being supported through it in a way that considers your emotional strength. When something is meant to be removed completely, this gentle phase often comes first. It is like a quiet preparation, a way of easing your heart into acceptance before the final separation happens. And if you pay attention during this time, you may find that your heart is already being guided toward letting go, even if part of you is still holding on. So instead of fighting every sign of distance, try to understand what it might be teaching you. Instead of forcing what is fading, allow yourself to reflect on why it no longer feels the same. Because sometimes the gradual loss you are experiencing is not meant to hurt you, but to protect you from a deeper loss that could come later if things continued. And when you begin to see it this way, the pain of something slipping away becomes softer, because you realize that you are not being abandoned. You are being gently guided away from something that was not meant to stay, in a way that protects your heart from breaking all at once. It is very easy to start measuring your worth based on what stays in your life. When something remains, you feel secure, and when something leaves, you begin to question yourself. You start wondering if you were not good enough, if you did something wrong, or if you could have done more to keep it from slipping away. This way of thinking quietly connects your value to outcomes, making you believe that what you can hold on to defines who you are. But this is not a fair measure of your worth, and it was never meant to be. Not everything that leaves your life is a reflection of your importance. Sometimes things leave simply because their time has ended, or because they were never meant to stay in the first place. You may have done everything right, you may have given your best effort, and still the outcome changes. That does not mean you lacked something. It means that not everything is meant to be controlled or kept, no matter how much you care about it. When you tie your value to what remains, you place yourself in a position where your sense of worth becomes unstable. Every change feels personal. Every loss feels like a failure, and every ending feels like a judgment on who you are. This can slowly drain your confidence and make you feel like you have to constantly prove yourself just to keep things from falling apart. But your value does not increase when something stays, and it does not decrease when something leaves. It remains steady because it comes from who you are, not from what you manage to keep. There are moments when you hold on to something so tightly because you believe that losing it will take something from you, as if your identity is connected to it. Whether it is a person, an opportunity, or a certain path you envisioned for yourself, you begin to feel like without it, you will be less than what you were before. But the truth is, what is meant for you will never require you to lose yourself in order to keep it. Anything that demands you to constantly prove your worth just to stay in your life is not adding to your value, it is slowly taking away from your peace. Sometimes Allah allows things to leave not because you are lacking, but because you are more than what you are trying to hold on to. You may not see it that way in the moment, especially when your heart is attached, but there is a difference between something being meaningful and something being necessary. What is meaningful can still leave, but what is truly meant for you will align with your life in a way that does not make you question your worth at every step. It is also important to understand that holding on to something is not always a sign of strength. Sometimes strength is in knowing when to release it. When you let go of something that is no longer meant for you, you are not losing your value, you are protecting it. You are choosing not to define yourself by something that is uncertain or unstable, and instead you are allowing your worth to stand on something deeper and more consistent. When you begin to separate your value from what you can hold on to, something shifts inside you. You become less afraid of change, less shaken by loss, and less dependent on outcomes to feel secure. You start to see that your worth is not something that can be taken away by a closed door or a fading connection. It remains with you, steady and unchanged, regardless of what comes or goes. And in that understanding, you begin to move differently. You still care, you still make effort, but you are no longer trying to hold on to things as proof of your value. You are simply allowing what is meant to stay to remain, and what is not meant for you to leave without turning it into a measure of who you are. Because your value was never something you had to earn by holding everything together. It was already within you long before anything came into your life, and it will remain with you even when things change. In the moment when something leaves your life or does not work out the way you hoped, it almost always feels like a loss. Your heart does not immediately see wisdom. It feels absence. It feels the gap where something used to be, or the disappointment of something you believed would happen but didn't. You may replay everything in your mind, trying to understand why it ended, why it was taken away, or why it never came together despite your effort. And because you cannot see beyond that moment, it feels like something valuable has been lost from your life. But what you feel in that moment is not always the full truth. It is only your current perspective, limited to what you can see and understand right now. Time has a way of revealing what your heart cannot grasp immediately. What feels like loss today can slowly unfold into something that makes sense later, not because the pain was imagined, but because the purpose behind it was hidden. When something is removed, your mind focuses on what you are losing, but it rarely shows you what you are being protected from. It does not show you the outcomes that could have followed, the stress you might have carried, or the way your peace could have been affected if things had continued. Those parts remain unseen, and because they are unseen, they are often forgotten. But Allah's knowledge is not limited to what is visible. He sees the paths you cannot see, the consequences you cannot predict, and the outcomes that your heart is not prepared to handle. There are many situations in life where after some time passes, you begin to look back and realize that what you once wanted so badly would not have been good for you. You see details you missed, patterns you did not notice, or outcomes that would have brought more difficulty than ease. And in that moment of reflection, something shifts inside you. What once felt like loss begins to feel like relief, and what once confused you begins to make sense. This understanding does not always come quickly. Sometimes it takes days, sometimes months, and sometimes even longer. But when it comes, it changes the way you see what happened. You realize that you were not being deprived, you were being directed. You were not being pushed away from something good, you were being guided away from something that was not meant to stay in your life. It is also important to recognize that your heart is naturally attached to what it knows. When something is familiar, even if it is not right for you, losing it can still feel painful. That pain does not mean it was meant to stay. It simply means you had grown used to it. And letting go of familiarity, even when it is necessary, can feel like losing a part of yourself. But with time, you begin to adjust, and what once felt necessary no longer holds the same weight. Trusting this process requires patience. It requires you to accept that you may not understand everything immediately, and that clarity often comes later, not at the moment things change. It requires you to hold on to the belief that Allah's decisions are based on a knowledge far greater than your current understanding, even when your emotions are telling you something different. You may find yourself in a place you did not expect, experiencing something that brings you a sense of peace you could not have imagined before. And when you look back at what you once tried so hard to hold on to, you begin to see it differently. You understand why it did not work, why it had to leave, and why it was never meant to stay. the feeling of loss begins to soften. It is replaced by a quiet gratitude, not because the process was easy, but because you can finally see what it protected you from. What once felt like something being taken away from you reveals itself as something being kept away from you for your own good. So when you face a situation that feels like loss, remind yourself that your understanding is still unfolding. What you feel now is not the final meaning of what is happening. Because sometimes what hurts in the present is actually a form of protection that only time can fully reveal. And when it does, you will see that nothing meant for you was ever truly taken away. So take a moment and breathe. Not everything that slipped away from you was meant to stay. And not everything that stopped working was meant to continue. You may not understand it right now, and your heart may still hold questions you cannot answer, but Allah does not remove something from your life without wisdom that goes far beyond what you can see. The struggle you feel is not because you are being denied, it is because you are being redirected with care you cannot yet measure. What you were trying to force may have looked right, may have felt right, but Allah sees what it would have done to your peace, your future, your heart. And out of His mercy, He placed a barrier between you and something you were not meant to carry. That is not loss. That is protection in its quietest and most powerful form. So instead of exhausting yourself trying to reopen what was closed, shift your heart. Trust that what is written for you will arrive without you having to break yourself for it. Trust that what left your life was never meant to remain. And trust that the doors Allah keeps closed are not there to hold you back, but to guide you forward. Because one day you will stand in front of something that feels right, something that opens with ease, something that brings peace instead of confusion. And in that moment, you will finally understand why everything you once tried so hard to force had to stay closed.